Hey everyone, Carl Brown here again today. Today we're going to talk about palm muting for beginners. Palm muting is really a technique used in a lot of heavier styles of music like metal and hard rock. It's used in other things too, but for the majority we're going to be talking about how those guys use it. Now the palm muting is basically done in the pick hand, and what's really going on is if you look at your hand, the outside of like where your pinky muscle is, that goes all the way down to the base of your hand, and sometimes the thumb muscle too, right here. What basically you're doing is you're laying that part of your hand on the strings, which is what it makes the strings not vibrate as wildly or as open, and it creates more of a percussive and bassy and thumpy sound. So even though we're using the term muting, you're kind of killing the vibration of the string a little bit, but you're also creating a lot more bass in the sound and a huge thump, which makes it sound very, very percussive. And it also makes things a little bit easier to play, because when a string is muted, it's actually easier to control. So some passages that you really see these, like the hard rock and metal guys, are playing doing really fast rhythms. A lot of them are made easier because the strings are so controlled in their movements because of it being muted, and all the muting is doing is it's decreasing the level that the string is vibrating at. So how do we get this going? Well, first of all, the number one rule with palm muting is not to do it too hard. You barely touch the string when you palm mute. And where we're going to place our palm, so this is the point of my hand that's going to be making contact, okay? And we're going to take that part of the hand right where the string comes over the bridge, just in front of the bridge, right where the string starts, okay? I'm going to take my palm, I'm going to place it, that part of my hand, I'm going to place it right there. And I'm going to flatten out my hand. And so it's going to take a big portion of this. It's not just like this, the very edge. This whole thing is laying on it. It just creates a nice pad. It's really, you're creating a pad that you're placing down on the strings, right where the strings begin. Okay? Now, that's going to put your picking hand, probably your pick, around your middle pickup, or between your two pickups if you don't have a middle pickup. And you want your wrist to stay straight. So we kind of have a 45-degree angle, and my hand is coming down right there on the. Now, mostly it's going to be the strings on the lower three strings that you're really going to be muting. So if you're like, well, how do I get my whole hand across all the strings? Don't worry about that. It's really about kind of coming across and having that little point at the base of your pinky muscle mute right there, lay it right across the strings. Now, how hard are we doing this? I'm going to hold just an E power chord, which is a 0 and 2 in the left hand, just the 5th and 6th strings. Now, obviously that's not muted. Now I'm going to take my palm down, and I'm going to let you see how light a movement it is. And hopefully you'll be able to pick this up on the camera. But I have my hand, basically, I'm going to hover right in the position of where I'm at. And I'm going to let my pick reach the strings, and I'm going to slowly come down to the strings. Getting closer. There it goes. I barely grace the strings, and I have the mute. Watch, I'll come up. I'll come off of it a little bit, and then barely back down. So you can barely tell that there's any movement going on in there. That shows you just how light I am pushing down. It's like as if you took your finger down here and just barely came down and just touched it. And some harmonics. So, you know, that is the most trouble that people have from this, is that they push too hard. And if you push too hard, you're going to actually pull the strings out of tune and completely kill the sound. You can't really tell what note I'm doing. I'm just putting a lot of pressure down into the strings. And if you have a floating trim system, which I don't, but if you have a floating trim system, it'll pull it up and out, and you go way out of whack. So you want to keep as light as touch as possible. So when you're doing this, try to make it be, just think in your mind, as light as my hand can be touching the string. That's what palm muting is going to be. So we have, now you see how much bassier that is in percussive, and that's used a lot in metal music when you see the So you see I'm using all my wrist there. You keep your hand planted there, just barely touching the strings, and just your wrist. I'm kind of exaggerating it here, but you keep your wrist and your forearm loose when you're doing that faster stuff. And that's how you get all the Metallica and all that kind of stuff, kind of style of playing. Now we don't always play chords. I mean, chords. Those are all power chords, and those are probably the most palm muted things there are, but people play a lot of single note riffs too that have a lot of muting involved with them. I'm going to do this little, it basically would sound like this. Now how that would sound without muting is, and here it is. And when you get like kick drums going with it, it just sounds huge. So it's the same process, but you notice with a lot of palm muting passages that some of the notes are muted and some of them aren't. So you need to get really good at doing things like this, where we're going to play single note, these single note things. And what I'm going to do is I want you to play 5th fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret on the 5th string. And then we're going to come over to the 6th string and do the same thing. So just get that going in the left hand. And then what I want you to do is do 4 strokes with alternate picking on each note. So it's going to go down, up on each note. So you're going to go down, up on the 5, then on the 4, 3, 2, then come over to the 6th string and do the same thing. So what this is going to be, you can first try it and try to play them, just get them down first, and then try to play them muted. By just barely touching the string back there in the back of your palm, right where the string meets the bridge. All right, now from there, what I want you to do is now work on being able to go back and forth between muted and non-muted. So this is a great exercise to do that in. And you're just barely going to lift up your hand when you're not muting. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with no muting, then barely drop your hand, and when you go down to the 4, mute that one. And then raise your right hand up a little bit again, unmute it, then pressure for the mute. So every other one's going to be muted. So just really listen to what you sound like and do these little exercises. First starting just with that 0-2 chord and trying to get a nice chunky sound of it, barely touching the strings. You'll feel that you'll start getting control of you'll feel like you can control the vibration of the strings. And then take it to that single note thing so you can go back and forth, okay, between non-muted and muted for both single string and for chords. All right, so have fun with this. Please go to guitarlessons365.com and support the site in any way you can. I really appreciate it. Thanks. See you next time. Bye-bye.